You know, usually when you walk into a medical clinic, your brain is just already running a million miles a minute.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredibly stressful.
Right. You're trying to remember all your symptoms, you're worrying about what might actually be wrong with you, and you're probably juggling like 5 different clipboards of intake paperwork.
Yeah, the stakes are just incredibly high. And the expectation from the medical staff is absolute precision.
Yeah.
They need accurate data to figure out what's going wrong inside your body. And that creates this inherently stressful environment for just about anyone.
Now, I want you to imagine doing all of that, but you are forced to do it in a language you're just learning.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Suddenly, explaining a simple cough feels like trying to defuse a bomb using an instruction manual written in a code you only half understand.
That's a terrifying thought. The cognitive load is immense in that scenario.
It really is. You aren't just managing physical pain anymore. You're managing this massive cognitive and linguistic hurdle right at the moment you're arguably the most vulnerable.
Right. It's the absolute definition of a high-stakes communication challenge.
Yeah.
A single misunderstood word could potentially alter your entire treatment.
Exactly. And that tension is exactly what we're focusing on today. Welcome to another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to explore how language learners are taught to navigate one of the most anxiety-inducing environments imaginable, which is a medical clinic in an English-speaking country.
And we have some really fascinating source material for this.
We do. We're looking at an educational transcript from the Easy English podcast. It features hosts Emily and David, and they've put together what is essentially a masterclass in medical communication.
Yeah, specifically designed for non-native speakers at a B1 listening level.
Right. And whether you're a language learner yourself or someone who travels internationally or honestly just someone interested in how intimidating systems get broken down into simple steps, you're going to get a lot out of this.
Oh, for sure. What's fascinating here is that it isn't just about the vocabulary. It actually maps out the entire underlying choreography of a medical encounter. It provides the psychological framework needed to articulate invisible pain.
Yeah, it really does. It shows how someone builds the confidence to demand clarity when their health is literally on the line. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Instead of just walking through the doctor's visit step by step, let's look at the first major conceptual shift the source material forces the learner to make, transforming their panic into actionable data.
Right, because you can't get help if you can't get past the front desk.
Exactly, the clinic receptionist.
The ultimate gateway to the medical system.
The source illustrates this with a staged conversation. So a patient, they call him David Wilson, calls the city health clinic to make an appointment.
Okay.
And the receptionist asks that classic, terrifyingly open-ended question, what seems to be the problem?
Oh, man. For a beginner language learner, broad questions like that are just paralyzing.
Completely.
I mean, the instinct is to just express general distress, right?
Yeah, and the lesson actually anticipates that. It notes that a learner's first reflex might be to just say things like, I feel sick, or I don't feel well.
Or even just, I feel tired.
Right, but then it pushes them to realize that general feelings don't help the clinic prioritize your emergency. Those phrases just do not help you get triaged effectively.
Well, let's define that for a second, because triage is the core mechanism of that front desk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Triage is the medical process of sorting patients based on the urgency of their need. A receptionist really can't triage a subjective feeling of just being unwell.
They need objective variable.
Exactly. So the curriculum pushes the learner to specify the exact location of the pain, moving from a vague, I feel sick, to I have a headache or my stomach hurts.
Oh, my throat hurts, yeah. But the patient in the role play goes one crucial step further. He doesn't just name the symptom, he quantifies it.
Right.
He says, I've had a bad cough for 3 days.
Yes, that part is so important.
When I was reading this, it struck me that booking an appointment in a second language is a lot like trying to pass a verbal bouncer at a very exclusive club.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You know, you can't just walk up and say, I want to come in because I'm cold. You need the exact right passcode to get past the velvet rope.
You have to prove your situation warrants entry. And that analogy holds up perfectly, especially when you look at the grammar involved in that passcode.
Tell me more about that.
Well, the lesson strategically teaches learners to pair their symptoms with specific time frames. The source explicitly highlights phrases like, I've had a headache since yesterday.
Or, I've been coughing for 3 days.
Right. This transforms a vague complaint into the exact data the bouncer or the receptionist needs to determine if this is a chronic annoyance or an acute emergency.
Looking at how this curriculum is structured, though, I have to wonder about the difficulty curve here.
What do you mean?
Is it harder for learners to memorize the specific vocabulary for body parts, or is the real challenge grasping the grammatical structures required to explain exactly how long it's been hurting?
Oh, the grammatical structure of time is almost certainly the bigger hurdle.
Really?
Yeah, memorizing the word headache is a static task. It's a simple one-to-one translation in your brain. But explaining duration in English requires the present perfect or present perfect continuous tense.
So saying I've had or I have been coughing.
Exactly. That requires a fundamental understanding of how the English language conceptually maps time, specifically an action starting in the past and continually bridging into the present.
So if a learner just says I cough 3 days, the medical meaning is mostly there, right?
It is, but the receptionist might struggle for a split second to parse it. And in a fast-paced clinic, those split-second hesitations just compound the patient's anxiety.
Ah, that makes sense.
The source material handles this brilliantly, though. It doesn't bog the learner down in grammatical terminology. It doesn't give a lecture on the present perfect continuous tense.
It simply teaches the phrases as functional, unbreakable chunks.
Yes, I've had Iva and I've been. It prioritizes function over grammatical theory.
It just hands them the passcode. It basically says, here's the exact phrase that gets the bouncer to open the door.
And it works?
It does, because the receptionist immediately follows up by checking for secondary symptoms, asking, do you have a fever?
Right. And the patient confirms it.
Boom. He secures a 3.3 euro PM appointment and instructions to arrive 15 minutes early. But, once you get past that bouncer, the dynamic completely changes.
Oh, absolutely.
The patient makes it to the exam room, and suddenly the linguistic challenge shifts from describing symptoms to actively decoding high-stakes commands.
Because the power dynamic in the room completely flips. With the receptionist, the patient was initiating the request.
They were driving the conversation.
Right. But in the exam room, the doctor takes command. The doctor initiates the encounter with another classic idiom, what brings you here today?
Which is such a bizarre phrase when you pull it apart. A non-native speaker is probably thinking, well, the bus brought me here.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're trained to push past the idiom and answer with those specific quantifiable symptoms.
Right.
The patient reports, I've been coughing a lot and I have a sore throat. And when asked about the fever, he specifies it was 100 degrees yesterday.
The source also equips learners with a toolkit of phrases for highly specific physical pain.
Like what?
Like saying, it hurts when I swallow. Or describing cold symptoms by saying, my son has been sneezing all day. Or mentioning a runny nose.
Notice how the patient's primary job shifts heavily toward listening comprehension here, too.
Yes, the source highlights this by having the doctor issue a series of physical commands. Open your mouth, say A, and take a deep breath.
The curriculum even pauses the narrative right there to do a dedicated listening practice segment. It makes the listener physically repeat, take a deep breath.
They emphasize this because misinterpreting a physical command during a medical exam is deeply problematic.
It's not just awkward.
No, it can literally lead to a misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
Imagine if the doctor tells you to exhale and you inhale, or if they ask you to bend a joint and you tense up instead.
That's a really good point. Speaking of things that cause immense awkwardness and confusion, here's where it gets really interesting from a purely linguistic standpoint.
Okay, I'm listening.
Later in the source material, there's an interactive segment called Mini Quiz 3. The hosts ask the listener to choose the correct sentence from 3 options.
What are the options?
I have a sore throat, I am sore throat, or I sore throat. Now, obviously, the answer is I have a sore throat.
Right.
But seeing it laid out like that made me realize how infuriating English medical idioms must be. Think about it. English treats some illnesses as objects that you possess, like in your pocket.
Oh, right. You have a sore throat. You have a headache. You have a fever.
Yes, but other times it's an adjective describing your state of being. You are sick. You are dizzy.
You are nauseous.
Oh.
Wow. Yeah.
Try putting yourself in the shoes of a learner, trying to explain a highly specific pain, like a sharp twinge versus a dull ache, when the fundamental rules of the language seem to be actively working against you.
It's entirely arbitrary from a learner's perspective. In many Romance languages, for example, the concept of possession is used for physical states.
Right.
You translate it directly and you're saying, I have hunger or
Yeah.
I have cold. In English, you are hungry and you are cold, but you have a cough.
It boggles the mind.
Navigating whether an illness is a possession or a state of being requires deep, repetitive memorization. There's no logical rule a learner can rely on in a moment of panic.
Which is why the repetition exercises in the source are so vital.
Exactly. They build muscle memory for these irregular phrasings so the patient doesn't have to consciously calculate the grammar while they're sitting on the exam table.
It really paints a picture of why the medical exam room is such a high-wire act. But the role play takes a really fascinating turn when it gets to the actual diagnosis.
Oh, the viral infection part.
Yeah. The doctor listens to the patient's lungs, says they sound clear, and diagnoses a viral infection. He reassures the patient it isn't serious and advises rest, drinking plenty of water, and sleeping well.
Standard advice.
But then the patient asks a very specific question. He says, "Do I need antibiotics?"
And the doctor definitively replies, no, antibiotics don't help with viral infections.
That moment stood out to me so much because suddenly this isn't just an English lesson anymore.
Right. The curriculum designers are doing something very clever here. They're using a pervasive global misconception as a dual-purpose teaching moment.
The idea that you should aggressively treat a viral cold with antibiotics.
Exactly. They're hitting two birds with one stone. They're teaching the English vocabulary for viral infection and antibiotics while actively educating the listener on medical best practices.
They're essentially preparing the non-native speaker for a scenario where they might be denied a medication they fully expected to receive.
Which happens a lot.
By role-playing that denial, they're helping to prevent a potential argument or a moment of deep confusion in the actual clinic.
It manages expectations beautifully.
It does. But, even if you perfectly articulate your symptoms, get your diagnosis, and manage your expectations, that victory is entirely undone if you can't decode the cure.
That's true. A diagnosis doesn't heal you. Taking the medication correctly does.
Right. And that brings us to a massive linguistic shift in the source material. We move from the realm of discovery in the exam room to the realm of execution.
The pharmacy encounter.
Yes. The patient takes his prescription to the pharmacist, and the instructions he receives are highly, highly specific.
They always are.
The pharmacist hands over the medicine and says, take 1 tablet after breakfast and 1 after dinner.
And then the patient asks, should I take it with water? Which the pharmacist confirms.
The source also heavily emphasizes the importance of asking about side effects. The patient asks, and the pharmacist warns him that he might feel sleepy, explicitly advising, don't drive if you feel tired.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the language used here is strictly functional. At the pharmacy, the singular goal is physical safety and compliance.
Yeah.
What this curriculum is doing is empowering the patient to ask critical, clarifying questions, like asking about water and side effects.
Rather than adopting the very common, very dangerous habit of just nodding along in confusion, going home, and taking a medication incorrectly.
Exactly.
I found myself looking at these pharmacy instructions like a high-stakes logic puzzle. It's essentially an if-then coding sequence that the patient has to run in their head.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Like, if I take this tablet, then it must be after food. If I feel tired, then I cannot drive. How can learners possibly bridge the gap when they're standing at a counter feeling physically awful and they have to process these rapid-fire logic puzzles?
Because pharmacists speak fast.
Incredibly fast.
Well, the cognitive load theory really comes into play here. When a person is stressed or feeling ill, their working memory, their ability to hold and manipulate new information in real time, it just severely drops. Right. The designers of the source material understand this. That's why they provide a separate mini-quiz specifically for the pharmacy instructions.
Oh, yeah. It asks the listener to recall if the patient should take 2 tablets before sleeping or 1 after breakfast and 1 after dinner.
It forces them to parse the data.
Exactly.
It trains the brain to isolate the variables. When you're overwhelmed by rapid speech, you can't try to translate every single word.
You just short circuit.
Right. As a learner, you bridge the gap by listening exclusively for numbers and time constraints. You learn to filter out the grammatical filler and grab onto the structural pillars of the sentence. 1, breakfast. 1, dinner.
It's like visually scanning a dense legal document, but you're only looking for the bold text.
That's a perfect way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
You anchor yourself to the core data points and construct the meaning around them.
The source material also covers what happens after the medication has done its job, which I think is a brilliant addition.
The follow-up visit.
Yeah. It walks through a follow-up. The doctor asks, how are you feeling now? And the curriculum provides phrases for describing improvement.
Right, so the patient learns to say things like, I feel much better now, and the cough is almost gone.
Or, I'm feeling better, but I'm still coughing a little. And importantly, the doctor checks for compliance, asking, did you finish your medicine?
He also checks on lifestyle factors, asking if the patient is sleeping well, to which the patient replies that he's been getting 8 hours a night.
There's also a secondary scenario introduced here that highlights why this vocabulary is so critical. A mother brings in her 7-year-old son.
Oh, right. She explains, "My son has been sneezing all day."
The doctor confirms it's just a common cold, advises rest and plenty of water. But the crucial functional part of this dialogue is when the mother asks, can he go to school tomorrow?
And the doctor recommends keeping him home for one more day.
It shows how medical English deeply intersects with daily life management. A mother needs to know the exact timeline of contagion, not just for her kid's health, but to manage her childcare and her job.
The language lesson is providing the tools to manage life logistics, not just biological symptoms.
Absolutely.
If you can't articulate that specific question about school to the doctor, you might send your kid to class and inadvertently infect the whole room, simply because you lacked the vocabulary to ask for clearance.
But here's the ultimate catch, and it's something the Easy English hosts tackle head-on. All of this vocabulary, the specific symptoms, the logic puzzles at the pharmacy, the logistical follow-up questions, all of it is absolutely useless if the learner freezes up in the moment.
Oh, 100%. You can memorize flashcards for 100 hours, but if your anxiety spikes when the doctor walks in, your mind goes blank.
Because anxiety is the absolute enemy of fluency.
It literally shuts down the language centers of the brain.
Which brings us to the final, and I'd argue most important, piece of the source materials puzzle. It's the pedagogy of confidence.
Yeah.
This curriculum isn't just about memorizing the word fever. It's about pure linguistic survival and self-advocacy.
The creators are incredibly transparent about this goal, too.
They really are. The hosts explicitly look at their listeners and tell them, you do not need perfect English.
I love that they say that.
They emphasize that doctors genuinely want to help you. They are actively trying to lower the emotional temperature of the room before the listener ever sets foot in a clinic.
And they do this by teaching what I consider to be the ultimate survival phrases.
Yes.
Which are, could you speak more slowly? And could you repeat that, please?
Yes. If you don't understand the doctor's instructions, you have to use these simple requests. The lesson reassures learners that even native English speakers use these exact phrases when they need clarity.
Absolutely.
But they don't just tell the listener to say these things. They bake the confidence building right into the structure of the audio itself.
They use these interactive elements, right?
Yeah, pattern breaks, where they literally pause the audio for 3 seconds and command the listener to speak their answer out loud.
So they'll set up a scenario saying, imagine you have a headache. Say this sentence, I've had a headache for 2 days.
And then they leave dead silence on the track,
Forcing the listener to vocalize the words.
They also include a listening challenge, where the listener has to repeat, I'm feeling better, but I'm still coughing a little, over and over again. Why is that physical repetition so important?
This raises an important question about the cognitive science of language acquisition and psychological resilience.
Okay, tell me.
By forcing the learner to practice the physical act of speaking into the silence of their living room or their car, they are systematically reducing the novelty of the action. When you're in the clinic, your heart rate is elevated. Cortisol is flooding your system. If that is the very first time your mouth is trying to form the physical shapes of the words, could you speak more slowly? Your brain might completely misfire.
The friction's just too high.
Yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
you just nod and pretend you understood.
Which is the worst case scenario.
Right. But if you've physically spoken that phrase 10 times in a low-stakes environment, the muscle memory takes over. It becomes an automatic reflex rather than a conscious, terrifying choice.
So the source material is essentially running emergency drills for the nervous system.
That's a great way to put it. Training the patient to deploy the parachute of asking for help.
So what does this all mean for us? We've explored this incredible structured guide for non-native speakers, but honestly, looking at how meticulously they train learners to ask questions, it completely challenges the notion that medical English is just a problem for people learning the language.
It really does.
Let's be real, asking a doctor to slow down, asking them to repeat themselves, clarifying the if-then side effects at the pharmacy. This is something absolutely everyone should be doing.
Oh, without a doubt.
Medical jargon is basically its own foreign language, even if you were born speaking English.
We often suffer from the illusion of communication in medical settings.
The illusion of communication.
Yeah, we sit on the exam table, we nod our heads because we don't want to look foolish or waste the doctor's time, and we leave the office with no real actionable idea of what was just explained to us.
We pretend we have the passcode when we don't, which really brings us to the end of our journey today.
It's been a great journey.
We've traced the brilliant path laid out by this easy English curriculum. We started at the reception desk learning the critical difference between a vague, subjective feeling and a quantified, objective symptom.
Moving from I feel sick to I've had a bad cough for 3 days.
Exactly. Then we moved into the exam room, navigating the power dynamic of physical commands and understanding the nuances of a diagnosis.
Like realizing why antibiotics won't cure a viral infection.
We tackled the high-stakes logic puzzle of the pharmacy, ensuring we know how to isolate variables to ask about taking tablets with water and avoiding driving if we're feeling sleepy.
And we even looked at the logistics of follow-up care. Learning to report that the cough is almost gone, or navigating when a sick child can return to school.
And most importantly, we analyzed how the curriculum equips learners with the psychological armor to advocate for their own health. The trained courage to simply say, "Could you repeat that, please?"
It's a phenomenal breakdown of how to turn a terrifying high-stakes encounter into a manageable step-by-step process.
It hands you the tools to get past the verbal bouncer and actually participate in your own healing.
It really does. And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, building on what you mentioned about native speakers.
Sure.
We've seen how non-native speakers are being explicitly and carefully trained to say, "Could you speak more slowly?" in a doctor's office. They are taught that demanding clarity is a smart, necessary survival tactic.
Right.
Perhaps native speakers should take a page out of their book. It forces us to wonder, how much better would everyone's healthcare experience be if we all actively adopted the humble, question-asking mindset of a language learner rather than pretending we understand everything the doctor says?
What a great point. Sometimes the absolute smartest, most powerful thing you can say in a room full of experts is, "I don't understand." Thank you all so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope it gave you a new perspective, whether you're mastering a new language, traveling abroad, or just trying to navigate your next checkup without panicking.
Thank you for listening.
Take care of yourselves, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.